What's happening there, guys, and welcome back to Cars Insider. We've all seen the strangest activities turning into sport, and there's no limit to how far daredevils will go for the sake of winning. So let's take a look at the top 10 weirdest motorsports on the planet. Number 10, King of the Hammers. When we talk about motorsports or even sports in general, the first thing that pops into our mind is racing. Well, the King of Hammers is also no stranger to racing. This dangerous, daring, yet intriguing sport combines two common motorsports together: rock crawling and desert racing. The world of motorsports is filled with intriguing landscapes and rough terrains where drivers engage in lengthy battles to prove who is better and faster. King of the Hammers, as weird as it sounds, can be a pretty daunting sport to watch or even participate in. It's mostly held in California, and all the participants compete with their Ultra 4 vehicles, which are ideal for the rough terrain of deserts. The race stretches over a 165-mile course with two drivers competing against each other. The goal is to see whoever crosses the rocky landscape filled with boulders and large stones first. Participants stand on the sides of the racetrack, cheering endlessly for the player of their choice. Number 9, Mobility Scooter Racing. When we talk about sports, the general assumption is that the person participating will be a thoroughly fit athlete. But if we're talking about racing and sports, why leave older people and those with mobility restrictions out of it? This mobility scooter racing is designed for the elderly in particular and takes place near retirement homes. It's an unregulated form of street racing, but is welcomed with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement by the elderly and the audience alike. Mobility scooter racing has received a ton of popularity since the time it was started, and people from all over the world are more than willing to participate in it, and some even look forward to it. Number 8, Sand Drag Racing. When we think of racing, the first thing that comes to our mind is a bunch of top-notch cars competing against each other on solid ground or asphalt roads. But this isn't the case with sand drag racing. As you can tell by the name, this motorsport takes place on sand. And what place comes to mind when you think of sand racing? You guessed it. These sand drag races take place in none other than Dubai, with proper 160-mile racetracks designed specifically for these races. The race entails a bunch of sand cars with massive engines, a ton of horsepower, and other features that make them one of the toughest vehicles out there. All the race cars over here are single-seat cars and are custom-made for the purpose of the race. Number 7, Sprint Boat Racing. Sprint boat racing is probably one of the most daunting motorsports out there, which requires extreme precision and quick thinking. As you can tell by the name, this racing doesn't take place on your usual concrete or mud tracks, but rather takes place in water. The track is designed with a ton of twists, turns, and stretches for over a meter. The race entails jet boats, and usually there are two people on one jet boat. The goal is to meander through the tricky water pathway and make all the necessary twists and turns without affording any loss of speed or time. Sprint boat racing was initiated in the waters of New Zealand, but through its immense popularity, sprint boat racing has made its way to a global level. Number 6, Lawnmower Racing. Would you have even imagined a bunch of lawnmowers driving around racetracks in the competition to win the title of the fastest and the best? Even though the concept of lawnmower racing sounds crazy, it's actually pretty common and a ton of people participate in it. The race consists of lawnmowers which have been modified and customized to make them the most powerful lawnmower on the track. The blades of the lawnmowers are removed for added safety and to keep the track smooth. While the race was initiated for the purpose of some casual fun, drivers quickly made it very competitive, and it's now taken seriously all over the world. Number 5, Swamp Buggy Racing. No guys, I promise you I didn't stutter. There is a buggy race, which, as you can tell by the name itself, takes place in a swamp. If you thought buggy racing was a weird motorsport, wait till you hear about swamp buggy racing. Swamp buggy racing is also popularly known as marsh buggy racing and takes place in a terrain with a swamp. These high-powered swamp buggies that take place in this motorsport are way different than your ordinary buggies and are designed to travel through rough and deep muddy terrains and even water, thus making them ideal for this type of racing. It's not just the race that's weird, but the winner of the race is expected to jump in the mud alongside his wife. Yes, we know it sounds crazy, but it's been a tradition since 1957, which winners are more than happy to follow even today. Number 4. Skid plate racing. This isn't one of those motorsports that are pretty self-explanatory just by their name. The cars that take place in this motorsport are designed especially for the purpose of skid plate racing. The cars have flat steel plates which are welded to the front wheels of the car, which is the whole purpose of skid plate racing. The goal is to finish the race without bumping into other cars or crashing anywhere and crossing the finish line without catching fire. We know it doesn't sound like much, but when you see a lot of cars on the racing lap, you'll realize how tricky the entire sport is and how difficult it can be to avoid any mishaps. Number 3. Formula Off-Road. We've all heard of Formula 1 racing, but what is Formula Off-Road? Well, it is as dangerous as it sounds, and anyone in their right mind would wonder why a person needs to even consider taking part in this race. But believe it or not, there are some daredevils out there who live their life on thrill and wouldn't mind risking it all. This daunting and dangerous motorsport takes place on extremely rough and mountainous terrains with 4x4 wheelers. The goal is to drive through steep hills. The race originated in Iceland and has spread all over the world since then, with drivers willing to participate in this intimidating motorsport. You can see these 4x4 wheelers driving extremely steep hills and tossing and turning without losing their speed. This has got to be one of the most risky and weirdest motorsports to date. Number 2. Pig and Ford Racing. We'll toss this one in the box of the strangest motorsports in the world. Anyone with a Model T Ford is eligible for the race. The race starts off with the participants running from the starting line, grabbing a pig, and then taking their pig with them to their Model T vehicle. The goal is to race around the designated track while making sure the pig remains safe. Once the lap is finished, the driver will then take another pig and replace it with the previous one and then follow the same pattern. This goes on for a predefined number of laps, and whoever finishes first without harming any of the pigs is declared as the winner. The race takes its inspiration from 1952 when a farmer lost his pig while driving his Model T vehicle. Number 1. Trailer Racing. We've talked about buggy racing, boats, four-wheelers, lawnmowers, and even mobility racing, but the one thing that we've saved for last is trailer racing. With trailer racing, as you can probably tell by the name, a bunch of trailers compete against each other on concrete tracks. Throughout the race, cars dodge around an 8-figure track with heavy trailers towed on their back. The goal is to reach the finish line first without losing or damaging the trailer that's being towed. Even though it doesn't sound dangerous, trailer racing can lead to some serious accidents. This race has become famous worldwide and takes place in many countries. Well guys, here's our pick of the top 10 weirdest motorsports on the planet. Have you ever participated in one or witnessed any of these firsthand? Let us know in the comments what you think and which motorsport you think is the weirdest. And while you're at it, do be sure to like and subscribe before we get out of here.